We talked about it Friday, Robert. And had you seen the NBC broadcast that was deleted?
I'm aware of it, but I didn't actually watch it.
Wait until you see just how damning it actually is. So this was the one time I missed it. I didn't see it in real time. I didn't get to document it in real time, but I found the video. And when you see the video,
Craig, good morning.
Not yet. Miguel Almer. I don't know. I don't actually know who this guy is. I haven't watched NBC in so long. They're all new faces. This is the report that NBC deleted.
Craig, good morning. When officers arrived here at the Pelosi home exactly a week ago today, they initially didn't have any idea exactly what was going on. They knew they had a high priority call on their hand.
And these are new details because the reporter spoke to people on the inside. They knew they had a high priority call on their hands. Let that bake in the background.
What was unclear, what was happening inside the property just behind me.
So dramatic. I love NBC's
This morning,
drama.
Paul Pelosi is home, back at the house that became a crime scene a week ago today. NBC News learning new details about the moments police arrived.
NBC learning new details. And Robert, I went over the criminal complaint last week, and I noted that they said the door was opened without specifying who opened the door. I asked that question before this broadcast.
Sources familiar with what unfolded in the Pelosi residence now revealing when officers responded to the high priority call, they were seemingly unaware they'd been called to the home of the Speaker of the House. After a knock and announce, the front door was opened by Mr. Pelosi. The 82-year-old did not immediately declare an emergency or try to leave his home.
Who opened the door? Paul Pelosi, who's allegedly had an intruder in his house wielding a hammer, whether or not he had already been injured, but apparently had not already been injured at this point because they say they saw the attack happen after.
But instead began walking several feet back into the foyer toward the assailant and away from police. It's unclear if the 82-year-old was already injured or what his mental state was, say sources. According to court documents, when the officer asked what was going on, defendant smiled and said everything's good.
High priority call. Paul Pelosi opens the door. The police don't immediately act. They ask everything's good for a high priority call and allegedly don't know that they're at the Pelosi residence.
But instantaneously, a struggle ensued as police clearly saw David DePape strike Paul Pelosi in the head with a hammer. After tackling the suspect, officers rushed to Mr. Pelosi, who was lying in a pool of blood.
What we do know is he brutally attacked Mr. Pelosi.
All right, we can stop it there because the rest of it is superfluous for the point that's being made. Robert, I feel like I'm going crazy here, but does any of that make any sense? They pulled the report afterwards because they reported, and it seems to be based on court documents or inferred from the criminal complaint, that Paul Pelosi opened the door, coupled with the additional information we got over the course of the week that there was a live video feed to the Pelosi residence that security could be surveilling at all times, but apparently wasn't at this point in time. You see ahead of the curve better than most. What do you see here?
I mean, I think it's the same thing that we discussed last week, that something is AWOL and that the media narrative, the original media narrative of the case doesn't make sense. And that's still the case. And so you have, apparently it was the Capitol Police that secured the facility with their own cameras and were monitoring on a regular basis. They haven't explained why it was no one was watching. They haven't explained why no one was physically present at the property. They haven't explained why they haven't released that footage. They haven't released the body camera footage that apparently the police officers have. They haven't released that either, nor have they explained why. So clearly there's some things about this story that don't add up from the original narrative of the case, and maybe we'll get bits and pieces of it over time. He purportedly confessed to the feds. Feds brought in additional charges, but then he goes in and pleads not guilty and appears to have suffered physical injuries different than what was reported at the time of his arrest, would suggest injuries incurred from sometime when he was in custody, either by police or by other prisoners. So a lot of questions to be asked. The San Francisco DA and the Justice Department has made clear they're going to try to hide a lot of information and intel. They were actually asking media not to report that this guy was part of a nudist camp, a nudist group movement there. His wife's apparently, or his partner, the defendant's partner, is apparently in prison for issues involving potential kidnapping for underage illicit purposes. So there's a lot of unusual aspects to this story that do not add up yet from the original institutional narrative of a week ago, last Sunday, where they were trying to pitch that a crazed Trump supporter attacked Pelosi because of how dangerous the Trump supporters are. That story has mostly fallen apart already. There's anomalies with what exactly is or is not his blog. There's anomalies with his political past that doesn't appear to be associated with his current alleged political beliefs. His statement his purported statement, according to the feds, is a statement that sounds like a completely crazy person that has lost all sense of the script, not a sense of politically motivated crime in a conventional sense. So a lot of things don't add up, and we'll see if in time we find out what they add up to, the facts that we're not being told now.
Now, I forget the name of the author. Elron, who's the author that you always cite about
James Ellroy.
James Ellroy. If I don't know how things work in Hollywood or in politics, but if someone has certain pastimes and they want to get rid of an incident cleanly, I mean, is it far-fetched to think, okay, I've got someone in my house who I cannot make leave for whatever the reason, and so the initial call was to quietly get rid of this so that nobody talks about it, and not because it was a violent attack to begin with, and then it turned into that?
That could be the case. You also could have the case that you have somebody turning off security for other reasons, and then somebody else shows up. So, normally when someone's turning off security, they don't want certain people to be watching or present because they're engaged in behavior they don't want others to know about. And then someone else may pop up in the middle of that is a legitimately crazy person, etc. But that there's something in the video footage they don't want people to see, and there's some reason why security wasn't present they don't want people to know. And so we'll see how that.
And what one last question is, Candace Owens, I'm not sure if she's the first person to say it, but a lot of people are saying he's charged with a number of things, but not breaking and entering. As a lawyer, do we make any hay of that, or is burglary close enough?
But burglary is, to a certain degree, because burglary but what is they've charged him with things where they don't have to prove that he illegally entered the premises. That Candace Owens is right about that. And that is a little bit odd under the circumstances.
He's being charged with burglary, but not breaking and entering. So
because burglary you can commit even if you're lawfully present.
Okay. And there was one last question, which I think I forgot. Oh, NBC deleting it. And apparently because it did not meet their journalistic standards. A load of crap. This is sort of like 60 Minutes talking about Ukraine and has to re-edit their documentary.
Yeah. I mean, NBC has yet to explain what was inaccurate in the report and why it was so.
All right. So that's the latest here. Andy ALMQ on Rumble says, Occam's Razor, Nancy tried to create another January 6th right before the election.
There's a lot of people who think that. There were a lot of convenience component, but I suspect otherwise, because otherwise, if you're going to script an event for the purposes of political benefit, you would have the proof of it, right? You wouldn't hide the proof of what took place. So I think that something happened and they tried to spin it for political profit, but I don't think that's why the original event happened itself, in all likelihood.